Welcome to The Explainer. Look, we all basically live on our mobile devices, right? We rely on them every single day. But honestly, how often do we actually stop and think about the insane, totally invisible journey our data takes? Well, today we are going to unravel that whole mystery. We're going to trace it from that tiny little piece of plastic in your pocket all the way to the invisible waves connecting the entire globe, and even look at the hidden security battles happening literally every time you make a call. So let's kick things off with a question that sounds simple but is actually kind of mind-boggling. When you power up your phone, out of the literal billions of devices on planet Earth, how does a network know it's specifically you trying to connect? How does it know exactly who to bill or who to route those incoming texts to?
To figure that out, we gotta start small, like micro-level small. Section 1, meet your SIM card. Okay, so this tiny little chip is essentially your phone's personal VIP badge. A SIM, or Subscriber Identity Module, is just a piece of plastic embedded with a silicon processor and memory circuits. It holds up to 256 kilobytes of digital information. Now I know, 256 KB doesn't sound like much compared to your phone's massive hard drive, but it is exactly enough to hold your texts, your contacts, your network plan, and most importantly, the digital identification that directly links your physical device to your customer account.
Let's actually unpack that ID badge for a second, because it's broken down into two very specific parts. First up, you have the IMSI, the International Mobile Subscriber Identity. This is a 64-bit number that verifies you. It proves you're actually allowed on the network. But then you also have the ICCID, or Integrated Circuit Card Identifier. This is an 18 to 22-digit code that identifies the physical hardware of the SIM card itself, pinpointing your industry, country, and service provider. So basically, the IMSI identifies you, the subscriber, while the ICCID identifies the physical card.
It's actually wild to look at the history here, because this physical card has aggressively shrunk over the last 25 years. I mean, back in 1991, the original SIM was literally the size of a standard credit card. Imagine trying to fit that into a modern smartphone. Then it shrank down to the mini SIM in '96, the micro in 2003, and the nano we're all used to in 2012. But the real game changer came in 2016 with the eSIM. The physical card just completely disappeared. It became this embedded, software-based format inside the phone, which is why modern devices can hold multiple numbers without you ever having to swap out a physical piece of plastic.
All right, so your identity is established and your phone is connected. But that brings us to a pretty critical question. Section 2. How secure is your call? Think of a standard GSM network architecture as a journey. The flow starts with your phone, the mobile station, connecting over the air to your local cell tower, the base transceiver station. From there, your data gets routed through a bunch of controllers and finally into the core mobile switching center to connect your call to the rest of the world. Now, on the surface, this looks incredibly structured and totally robust, right? Yeah, about that. There is a massive catch when it comes to ciphering and keeping your data safe. The standard GSM system only gives you what's known as air interface encryption. What that means is, during that initial handshaking process, encryption only protects that wireless jump between your phone and the local cell tower. Once your data enters the core switching network, there is absolutely zero user-to-user, end-to-end security. It's like locking your front door but leaving the entire back of your house wide open.
And because of that massive gap, things get pretty scary. Since the network providers handle the encryption, an attacker can completely exploit the system. We're talking about SIM swapping, where a hacker just tricks your provider into transferring your account to their SIM card, or IMSI catchers, these malicious devices that literally pretend to be legitimate cell towers just to steal your identity. Because there's a gap in the encryption chain, man-in-the-middle attackers can intercept, eavesdrop, and even change your communications on the fly.
And hey, if you're thinking, well, at least the legacy encryption is a solid backup, scratch that. Researchers have completely reverse-engineered the standard A5 algorithms used in these networks. They prove that the older A5/2 algorithm is so ridiculously weak that an attacker using a standard everyday PC can extract the encryption session key in literal milliseconds, meaning they can intercept your supposedly secure data almost instantaneously. No supercomputer required.
So yeah, that paints a pretty alarming picture for our privacy. But thankfully, computer scientists have proposed a heroic solution to bypass these untrusted networks altogether. Section 3. Fixing the GSM flaws.
Enter EEE GSM. This is a proposed architecture that completely flips the script on who holds the keys to your privacy. EEE stands for end-to-end encryption. So instead of relying on the network to encrypt the call for you, EEGSM uses this mathematical approach called certificateless public key cryptography, or CLPKC. What you really need to take away from this alphabet soup is that it kicks out the vulnerable middleman. The service provider's only job becomes just switching the call from point A to point B. They have zero ability to decrypt the actual data flowing through their own system.
Here is how this proposed flow actually works under the hood, with your SIM card acting as the engine. When you make a call, the system takes a pre-shared master key, combines it with your unique phone number and your local area identity, and just hashes all of that together. This creates temporary, super secure public and private keys. You encrypt the message using the receiver's public key, and only their private key can decrypt it. The core network never even sees the raw keys, completely shutting down any chance of eavesdropping.
When you stack it up against the old A5 algorithm, EEGSM is an absolute game changer. Because it actually hides your permanent MCI and relies on this new math, it plugs all the holes left by traditional A5 encryption. It finally provides that true end-to-end security. And because it masks your permanent identity, it becomes totally robust against those scary IMSC catchers and false base stations we talked about. It places the trust directly between the users, totally bypassing the service provider's infrastructure. So, while the security experts are working hard to fix things on the inside, the massive cellular networks themselves are undergoing an unprecedented physical revolution on the outside. Section 4, the 5G network revolution. Looking at the macro level, this leap in capabilities from 4G to 5G is, honestly, it's staggering. Back with 4G LTE, a max data rate of 1 gigabit per second felt ridiculously fast. But 5G? It starts out pushing 5 to 10 gigabits per second, and in the future, it has the potential to reach an insane 100 gigabits. To pull that off, it has to completely abandon traditional radio access networks that need tons of expensive physical infrastructure, and instead move toward highly efficient cloud-based networks. But you know what the craziest metric here actually is? The network latency drop. It goes from up to 200 milliseconds in 4G, all the way down to just 1 to 3 milliseconds in 5G. Now, latency is just the delay it takes for a signal to travel to the base station and back. But why do a couple of tiny milliseconds matter so much? Because 1 to 3 milliseconds is the exact near-instant speed required for critical real-time applications. We're talking self-driving cars navigating heavy traffic, or a surgeon performing remote surgery using a robotic arm from halfway across the planet. You really do not want a lag spike there.
So how do they actually pull this off? Well, 5G utilizes incredibly wide millimeter waves, giving us way larger bandwidths than the low frequencies we used in 4G. It also uses device-to-device communication. This means your phone could theoretically just connect directly to a nearby wireless network to offload data, which takes a ton of strain off the main base stations. The whole architecture is designed for the narrowband Internet of Things, meaning it can seamlessly connect billions of smart sensors, autonomous cars, and entire smart cities, literally all at the exact same time.
So zooming back out for a second, we've got that tiny little SIM card identifying us, we have intense cryptographic battles fighting to keep our data private, and we have these massive cloud-based 5G networks blanketing our cities. We are basically building this hyper-fast, globally connected world where everything, from our cars to our medical implants, is totally online. But as 5G scales up to connect literally billions of devices simultaneously, you got to ask yourself, are our foundational hardware and aging security protocols truly ready to protect our most intimate secrets? Let's hope so.